Emma Kline was the kind of teacher every parent wished for, and Jacob Miller was the quiet 11-year-old who adored her until a single discovery exposed a secret connection that would tear their entire town apart. In the small town of Clearwater Ridge, life moved at a slow and familiar rhythm. It was the kind of place where neighbors waved to each other from their porches, where every shopkeeper knew their customers by name, and where parents felt certain their children were safe. At the heart of this peaceful community stood Clearwater Elementary, a modest brick school that had educated generations of local families. Parents trusted the teachers as if they were extended family, believing that the people inside those classrooms were dedicated only to shaping young minds. Among the staff was Emma Kline, a 29-year-old reading instructor who seemed to embody everything the town valued. With her warm smile, cheerful energy, and endless patience, she had quickly become one of the most beloved teachers on campus. Emma's classroom was a bright, welcoming space filled with colorful posters and neatly arranged books. Children often lingered there after the bell, drawn by her ability to make every lesson feel like an adventure. She organized book fairs, started a weekend reading club, and volunteered for almost every school event, from science fairs to holiday drives. Parents admired her commitment and often spoke about how lucky the school was to have someone so passionate about education. For many students, she wasn't just a teacher, but a source of comfort, a person who made them feel heard and important. The trust she built with families was effortless, and few people questioned the amount of extra time she spent with her students. Outside of school, Emma lived a quiet life that matched the town's easy pace. She rented a small cottage near the river and was often seen jogging along the trails or browsing books at the local library. When people spotted her at the farmer's market or the cafe on Main Street, she always stopped to chat, asking about their children or sharing tips for upcoming school projects. Her presence seemed to reassure parents that their kids were in the best possible hands. Over the years, she became more than a teacher. She became a symbol of dedication and kindness. The idea that someone so caring could harbor dangerous secrets was unthinkable to those who knew her. But beneath the friendly smiles and well-organized lesson plans, Emma was hiding a private world that no one suspected. Small, nearly invisible choices began to shape a darker pattern. Late-night emails about extra help sessions, subtle favoritism towards certain students, and unexplained time spent in empty classrooms were brushed off as signs of her dedication. No one wanted to believe anything was wrong because everything about her appeared so perfect. The culture of trust that defined Clearwater Ridge allowed her to move without suspicion, each small step leading her further into a dangerous situation that would eventually shock the entire town. What seemed like harmless devotion was, in truth, the careful construction of a double life that no one was prepared to uncover. The first cracks in Emma Kline's perfect image appeared so quietly that most people barely noticed. It began with a substitute teacher who filled in during a routine sick day. While checking the class tablet for attendance records, the substitute found a series of short messages that seemed out of place. They were friendly but oddly timed, appearing late at night when no school business should have been happening. The messages were written in a way that felt too personal, almost secretive, though nothing in them was explicit enough to raise an immediate alarm. The substitute hesitated, unsure whether to mention the discovery or simply dismiss it as harmless teacher-student chatter. In a small town where everyone trusted one another, it was easy to convince oneself that suspicion was unnecessary. Around the same time, small comments from students began to surface. A few children mentioned staying after school for special help sessions that no one else seemed to know about. At first, these remarks sounded like normal tutoring arrangements, but the details didn't add up. The sessions were said to happen at odd hours, sometimes in empty rooms far from the main hallway. When asked about them, the children gave vague answers, describing the meetings as fun but private. The substitute teacher, already uneasy about the strange messages, began to feel a creeping sense that something was not right. It wasn't proof, but it was enough to plant a seed of worrying. The administration first heard whispers during a casual staff meeting. A janitor mentioned seeing Emma leaving the school unusually late, long after the building should have been empty. Another teacher recalled receiving a late-night email from her about classroom supplies, but the subject line contained an odd inside joke that didn't make sense. None of these observations were alarming on their own, but together they formed a picture that felt slightly off. The principal, a cautious man who prided himself on maintaining a safe environment, decided to quietly review Emma's school-issued devices. He expected to find nothing more than overzealous dedication, maybe a few late-night lesson plans. What he found instead gave him pause. Hidden within encrypted folders were exchanges between Emma and one of her 11-year-old students. The messages were carefully worded but unmistakably personal, filled with affection and promises of private time. Though no explicit language appeared in the texts, the frequency and secrecy suggested a relationship far beyond what was appropriate. The principal immediately contacted district officials, who in turn brought in local authorities to investigate. Detectives began monitoring Emma's activity, gathering evidence without alerting her to their presence. They feared that confronting her too soon might drive her to hide more information or, worse, take actions that could harm the child. Parents remained unaware of the growing investigation as police quietly pieced together the trail. Teachers continued their daily routines, not realizing that their colleague was under close surveillance. Every school bell and hallway conversation masked the tension building behind the scenes. What started as a few strange messages had now become a carefully guarded secret shared only by investigators. A secret that threatened to shatter the calm of Clearwater Ridge once it came to light. Detectives worked methodically as they traced the path of Emma Kline's hidden life. What began as encrypted folders on a school tablet soon opened into a network of private accounts and carefully timed exchanges. Investigators discovered that Emma had been communicating with the 11-year-old boy for months, using a mix of school email, gaming platforms, and secret messaging apps. Each message was subtle enough to appear harmless on its own, but together they revealed a slow and deliberate pattern of grooming. She praised the child's reading skills, offered small rewards for good grades, and encouraged private conversations that excluded parents and classmates. The strategy was clear: isolate the boy from others while making him feel special, as though he was part of an exclusive friendship that no one else could understand. The boy's digital footprint told an unsettling story. Detectives found late-night exchanges where Emma suggested extra tutoring sessions and shared personal details about her own life, creating a bond that blurred the line between teacher and student. She sent photos of books, gifts, and classroom decorations, always wrapped in the language of school projects but carrying a tone of secret affection. The boy responded with trust, believing he had found a mentor who cared more than anyone else. Investigators feared that this relationship was moving from messages to real-world encounters, and every hour that passed without action felt dangerous. While detectives worked behind the scenes, Emma continued her daily routine without a hint of worrying. She arrived early each morning, greeting colleagues with her usual cheerful energy, and stayed late under the pretense of preparing lesson plans. Parents still waved to her in the parking lot, unaware that police were quietly following her every move. Surveillance teams documented her trips to bookstores, coffee shops, and playgrounds, searching for any sign that she planned to meet the boy outside of school grounds. Each observation added to the growing case, but officers knew they needed undeniable evidence before making an arrest. The tension deepened when investigators uncovered a pattern of carefully planned meetings within the school itself. Security footage revealed Emma repeatedly entering unused classrooms with the boy during times when other students were at recess or in different parts of the building. The encounters were brief, often less than 10 minutes, but they happened too often to be coincidence. Teachers who had once dismissed her late hours as dedication began to remember small moments that suddenly seemed suspicious: a door quietly closing, a hallway light flicking off, a hurried explanation for why she was alone with a student. As the evidence mounted, the investigative team faced a critical decision. They had enough to suspect criminal intent, but needed one final piece to ensure the case would hold in court. A search warrant for her home computer was requested, and when executed, it revealed additional encrypted files containing private photos of school events and personal notes addressed to the boy. Though none of the content was explicit, it confirmed the depth of her obsession and her attempts to keep their connection hidden from everyone else. With each discovery, the picture of Emma Kline as a trusted educator faded, replaced by the chilling reality of a predator carefully operating behind the mask of a beloved teacher. The decision to confront Emma Kline came after weeks of silent observation and careful planning. Investigators understood that timing was everything. Acting too soon risked losing crucial evidence, but waiting too long could put the child in further danger. After reviewing the digital files recovered from her home computer and the security footage from the school, detectives determined that the case was strong enough to move forward. They coordinated with school administrators to ensure that the arrest would happen quietly, without alarming students or allowing Emma any chance to escape or destroy evidence. Every step was rehearsed, from the placement of patrol cars to the exact moment officers would approach her. The chosen day was a Thursday afternoon, when most parents were still at work and the school was beginning to empty after dismissal. Rain drizzled over Clearwater Ridge, casting a gray haze across the parking lot. Officers arrived in unmarked vehicles and waited near the side entrance where Emma typically exited after staying late to tidy her classroom. Inside the building, administrators kept a close watch, making sure that the hallways remained clear and that students were safely accounted for. The tension was nearly unbearable for those who knew what was about to unfold. Teachers carried on their normal routines, smiling at children and chatting with parents, unaware that one of their colleagues was moments away from being taken into custody. Emma left her classroom with her usual calm, carrying a stack of papers and a bag slung over her shoulder. She locked the door behind her, completely unaware of the quiet operation closing in around her. As she stepped into the damp evening air, two plainclothes detectives approached from opposite sides of the walkway. Their movements were deliberate but unhurried, designed to avoid panic. One officer identified himself and asked her to stop. At first she seemed confused, glancing from one face to the other as the reality of the situation slowly took hold. When the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, she stiffened but did not struggle. Teachers and parents arriving to pick up their children paused in stunned silence, watching as the smiling educator they had trusted for years was escorted to an unmarked car. Inside the school, the principal quietly informed staff that Emma would not be returning. A heavy stillness settled over the building as word spread among those who had noticed the commotion outside. Some teachers felt disbelief, others a creeping sense of guilt for missing the signs. Parents who had once praised her dedication now scrambled to understand how such a betrayal could have remained hidden for so long. Meanwhile, detectives followed procedure with steady precision, reading Emma her rights and collecting the belongings she carried. The rain intensified as the patrol car pulled away, washing over the school like a grim curtain closing on a chapter of false trust. For the residents of Clearwater Ridge, the sight of a beloved teacher taken away by police marked the first undeniable proof that their quiet town was not as safe as they had always believed. In the days following Emma Kline's arrest, Clearwater Ridge was consumed by shock and confusion. News of the investigation spread faster than officials could release statements, leaving residents desperate for information and struggling to accept what had happened. Parents who had once praised Emma as dedication now questioned every interaction their children had ever shared with her. At the grocery store, in coffee shops, and along the quiet side walks, conversations repeated the same disbelief. How could someone so trusted, so admired, have hidden something so serious for so long? The sense of safety that had defined the town felt suddenly fragile, as though a curtain had been ripped away to reveal a darker reality. As detectives continued their work, new details emerged that deepened the community's unease. Investigators disclosed that Emma had admitted to maintaining a secret relationship with the 11-year-old boy, describing her actions as a misguided friendship despite overwhelming evidence of grooming. The boy's family cooperated fully, providing access to devices and messages while focusing on protecting their child from further trauma. Counselors were brought in immediately to support the boy and his relatives, ensuring that he received care away from public attention. Local authorities emphasized that the child would not face any legal consequences and urged the community to respect his privacy. But speculation continued to swirl among neighbors and classmates. The court process began quickly, drawing widespread attention beyond Clearwater Ridge during preliminary hearings. Prosecutors presented the digital evidence, hundreds of messages, encrypted folders, and hidden photographs that demonstrated a sustained pattern of manipulation. Each piece of evidence reinforced the narrative of a teacher who had exploited trust for her own gratification. Emma sat silently during the proceedings, her once bright demeanor replaced by a flat, distant stare. Reporters filled the courtroom, their cameras capturing every fleeting reaction from the defendant and the victim's family. The case became a regional headline, a cautionary story about the hidden dangers that can exist even in the most familiar places. When the trial concluded, the verdict was swift and decisive. Emma was convicted on multiple charges related to child exploitation and abuse of authority. The judge delivered a lengthy sentence designed to reflect both the severity of the crime and the betrayal of public trust. Parents who attended the sentencing described a mix of relief and sorrow. Justice had been served, but no verdict could fully undo the damage. Teachers and administrators from Clearwater Elementary sat together in the gallery, some holding hands as they listened to the final ruling. Many wept quietly, mourning not only for the victim but for the loss of innocence in their tight-knit community. In the months after the conviction, the school district implemented sweeping reforms aimed at protecting students. New policies required stricter background checks, enhanced monitoring of electronic communications, and mandatory training for all staff on recognizing grooming behavior. Parents became more involved in daily school life, attending board meetings and pushing for transparency at every level. Slowly, Clearwater Ridge began to rebuild its sense of security, though scars of the case remained. The arrest and conviction of Emma Kline served as a permanent reminder that evil can wear a familiar face and that vigilance is the only true safeguard against hidden predators.